Guys, welcome to another Sales Wisdom podcast. Today we've got Will Aitken with us. He is social at Lavender's been producing a bunch of cool videos, which I've been enjoying my LinkedIn feed. We're going to talk about social. We're going to talk about sales. We're going to talk about a new sales slash AI startup, which is one of my favorite topics nowadays. So Will, welcome to the pod. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Lavender?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Charles. My name's Will. I run a lot of the content over at Lavender, which is obviously sales orientated, kind of a subject matter expertise and content creator kind of role. So I bring what I know about sales and the sales community that I've built my own brand to Lavender and produce some of the best content, in my opinion, in the B2B space. Lavender itself is an AI email assistant, which helps sales reps write better emails. A lot of the world of AI right now is all focused on generative AI, whereas we're more on the kind of idea that rather than trying to replace the work, you should just try and augment it, improve what's already there, improve what the human can do, rather than try and take the word job completely off their hands. Because I don't think AI is there yet. And I think that the human element of sales is what makes sales so interesting. So that's the brief overview.
I want to talk about your background first. Some of the companies you worked at that caught my attention, some of them being one of my favorite company, Vidyard. But I want to start with Proposify. What did you learn from your time there as an AE?
Yeah, so that's really where I got good at sales, I'd say. Prior to that, I had been working in sales for a few years, recruitment, B2B sales, selling ads, selling campaigns, selling people in recruitment, really. And I'd never really got any formal training. I never really understood sales. I kind of had that. I think a lot of people who get into sales have this mentality that I was so focused on the product and what I was selling, I never really stopped to think about the customer and the reasons why they might buy. So when I started Proposify, I got some really, really top tier training from a couple of managers there. A lot of Sandler stuff, a lot of gap selling, a lot of challenger sales methodologies. And that's something it all started clicking that really, if you want to sell something, you've got to focus on the customer, ask them the right questions, uncover the right pain points, because that's the reason they're going to buy, not because your product is the coolest, shiniest gadget in the world, but because it's going to solve a real challenge for them. And then from there, I actually started getting good at sales. And once I was hitting my quota, I was looking for a hobby and I started creating content, which led me down the path to where I am now.
Right. Need to ask also, like, what are you doing in Canada? You're Australian. I see Prince Edward Island, which is a beautiful place, but most people don't know about it. And I see
No.
Halifax. And by the way, HR.com, that's another one we need to talk about, epic domain name. But what are you doing in Canada?
Yeah, my wife's Canadian, so I'm not actually Australian. I'm British, but I went
Right.
back in 2016, and when I got to Sydney, Australia, I started at one of my first sales jobs, and on the first day, I was sat next to my now wife. She's Canadian. We spent a couple of years in Australia. That's where I was a recruiter, and then we moved to Canada to finish her studies at University of Prince Edward Island, where she's originally from. And once she was graduated from there, we wanted to go somewhere a little bit more busy because, for those of you who don't know, Prince Edward Island is a very small province, very quiet. It's kind of like, it's more holiday, retirement kind of
Right.
vacation spot than anything. The main
Right.
industries are tourism and fishing. So
Right.
Halifax was close enough to her family, but also has direct flights back to the UK. So it's kind of a nice middle ground for both of us. And that's how I got here.
Yeah, really special spot. So my dad is from New Brunswick.
You
Not
don't
sure if you
say.
know. Yeah, Shediac. Do you know
Oh,
Shediac? Like,
right. Yeah. Okay. So he's from the more French speaking part. Yeah.
right. And well, his parents, neither of them spoke French, funnily enough. And
Oh,
Shediac, for those that don't know, it's like the lobster capital in Canada. And man, do I love people from these places. They're so relaxed, like in the Maritimes. And yeah,
sometimes too
such,
relaxed. It doesn't
yeah,
always, like if you want to get something done, but yeah,
I
they're
agree.
definitely really friendly people out here. And the fish, if you're a seafood fan, is to die for all over the Maritimes.
Right. And yeah, the too relaxed thing, I must agree, it's like kind of small town phenomenon. So my dad, he's one of the only one that got out of Shadiac to actually do something with his life, right? So what he did
Yeah.
was considered bold back in the days to go in Montreal and have a master's in marketing. And that's where he met my mom, And yeah, that was a bold move that kind of inspired my own nomadism, if you want, subconsciously even. What did you learn from your nomad stint?
Hmm. Uh, Let me just think about that. What did I learn? Beer in Thailand is very cheap. Let me think. I don't know. I feel like it's more of a worldview than any one thing I could nail down. Just being open to.
Adaptability, no?
Yeah, I think. Do you know what? I will say one thing. Because I've moved from country to country, I've had to start over a few times, which does mean that you kind of become very good at just getting it done. Like when I moved from the UK to France, I had to start over. And then when I moved to the France to the Australia, I had to start over. And then I moved from Australia to Canada, I had to start over. And then we moved from Prince Edward Island to how you kind of get very good at just like, all right, let's get this done. All right. And we'll make it work no matter what, no matter where we are. I'll find something and I'll make it work. So I feel like that probably, if anything, has probably rubbed off the most. Um, yeah, I'd say that's the one thing from being a
It's a
mover.
strong one. It's a very strong one. It's a topic I'm often talking about with my current COO. My objective on the short term is kind of to have this ecosystem of businesses, starting with agencies, which is what I know, then AI and all of that. And me, I'm a starter. I'm a party starter. So that's like high fucking energy and kind of
Yeah.
explosive, but it doesn't last long, right? You get tired real quick.
Well,
While a
you get itchy
COO,
feet,
yeah,
but
kind
yeah,
of. And that the COO, he picks up that energy and that better prototype that I built, which is very, very valuable, by the way. A lot of people cannot do that.
mm,
And he picks it up with his more stable, slow burning energy. That's kind of how I
yeah.
see it.
Yeah, a lot of people would be intimidated by starting from scratch, but I feel like that sounds like yourself as well is probably something that, if anything, excites me. A clean slate.
Right. And that's the beauty of like the party starter and the integrator kind of dynamics. But I want to continue and talk about the top 10 favorite startup of mine, which is Vidyard, which I
Mhm.
believe is from Toronto, right?
Just outside Kitchener. Yeah,
Right. They're quite amazing.
yeah.
I love like a lot of aspects of Vidyard, their pricing strategy, their limit to 25 videos,
Mhm.
strat, and how they started. So tell us the lessons you learned from your time at Vidyard.
Yeah. So my time at Vidyard was a bit of a funny one because it was a unique role there. I love when I was working at Proposify, we were a Vidyard customer. I love the product. And I was selling at Proposify, but I was making content on the side, building a personal brand. And the VP of marketing at Vidyard, Tyler Lassard, basically noticed this content, noticed that I had the sales expertise, but also was quite okay at making engaging content. And he basically said, "Do you want to come be a content creator?" Because Vidyard is about to start a brand new media brand called SalesFeed, building from scratch. Sound familiar? And he said, "I want a creator on the team who knows about sales, who is willing to create content, who's kind of gritty, going to get out there and bring us an audience, essentially. It'd be great if they had a personal brand as well." Back then, I was a lot less known than I am now. But anyway, so my role at Vidyard was actually sitting on the sales feed team, which is a smaller team of around 5 people within it's kind of sub brand under Vidyard. It's a separate media brand, and it's just 100% sales content, community growth. And that wasn't my vision. I just brought in to execute on it. It was actually the CEO, Mike Lister, Mike Litt. Sorry, they just brought on Jonathan Lister, so I'm getting confused. And Tyler's kind of brainchild. But oh boy, it was great. And then we touched on the Vidyard side of things quite a lot. So whenever there was an event, whenever there was a webinar or a speaking opportunity, as I said, I was passionate about sales videos, so I'd always jump on those and rep Vidyard on the side as well.
You seem to have made various good decisions in terms of your career, kind
I
of
would like to
on.
tell you that I was intentional about any of this. Just
That's
you
so
know,
surprising, that's the exact question I have. Like, it seems so intentional. Like, it seems that every move was calculated because you've landed at top companies. You also made that, or maybe it's you're just a natural at this. You made the connection that a good salesperson is a good video communicator, right? And you need to send personalized vidyard, most probably to get people's reaction. Proposify is about sending great quotes. Obviously, you understand tech in the back end of all of this. And now
hmm.
Lavender, which seems to be a top company at what they do. Your content is epic. Like, are you just talented? Is it just natural and you don't like think about any of this?
It's a good question. And I don't want to float my own boat too much. Like I said, none of this was really that intentional. So when I was a seller and I started getting good at sales, by being good, I meant like, Proposify didn't have the best track record of hitting quota. As a rep, I was able to hit quota consistently more than any other rep that had been there. And it was because I enacted in a lot of the training, right? So like I was helped a lot of the way. And then I didn't want to be a content creator. In fact, when Tyler originally reached out to me from Vidyard, I said, nah, I'm a salesperson, marketing, But then a couple of things happened at work. I didn't get a promotion that I really wanted, and I was feeling a little bit resentful. So then I said, okay, let's hear what you have. And then when he told me about it, I was like, I need to jump on this. So I've almost kind of like more so just like looked like jumped on opportunities, sometimes for the wrong reasons, but they've always worked out. And then once I get there, I just have to make it work. And I think even content creation and sales, you have to fail a lot. So I'm not naturally talented at either of those things. You just learn from your mistakes with enough repetitions and with enough coaching, both from other people, from yourself, with content from the audience, if they're going to engage or not. You start to learn what does work and what doesn't, and then double downing on those successes and removing what isn't working. Naturally, you're going to get good at any task that you put your mind to. I think the big difference as well is that when I've created content, I really do love what I do and what I'm selling and what I'm wrapping. So in those senses, yes. I mean, I wouldn't have worked for a company if it wasn't Vidyard per se, and I wouldn't have joined another company to do what I'm doing here at Lavender if it wasn't Lavender. So I feel like conviction is part of it as well, but really most success has just come from falling down and getting back up and figuring out why I fell over last time, right? If
Right.
you went back and saw my first videos, you'd be like, oh, this is horrible, uncomfortable to watch because they just weren't as good as they were now. But I did 100 of them, and guess what? That makes you better.
Right. Grit. And it's kind of my job to deconstruct people on this podcast. And it's a very hard thing to do. Like some people, what one as humans, self-consciousness is a very hard thing to learn. It's not floating your own boat, just trying and trying because yeah, it's hard to evaluate yourself objectively. And second, most of us we forget, right? So my intuition with you is that yeah, you have a very strong instinct. You love selling. It might have been a natural thing that you did when you were young. Were you good at making friends when you were young or at parties?
Um, well, I will say that the content that I make. Sorry, I'm just having notifications galore right now. My bad. The content that I make is often very humor, entertainment. It's not just beige, right?
It's
And
your
that comes
British
from just like
accent.
it's the British accent. I don't know what it is, but as a growing up, I suppose I was always making fun of my friends and
Right.
myself and situations and trying to be funny, I guess.
Class
So I feel
clown
like
type
being
of.
able to see what's relatable and what's humorous, and although I'm not making fun of people anymore like my buddies, because that's very British culture, Australian culture, just being nasty to one another is how you make friends. I can see the moments of whether it be losing a sale or making a cold call or sending an email that is relatable because I've lived it and I can poke fun and make fun of the situation now. And that is what gets people going, oh, yeah, that happens all the time. When you send the world's best email and then you get the email back that says the email address was wrong and you just wasted 20 minutes writing a really good email, right? So like seeing those moments that happen to a lot of people and then bringing light to those, not only is it relatable and kind of almost making sales a little bit less grueling, but it also teaches people you can use humor to teach people as well. So if I can make fun of cliches in emails like, oh, I hope this finds you well, if I can make that a joke, then it also gets people thinking about, oh, maybe that's not the right way to do things as well. So it's not just being a class clown. There's a bit more thought about what I do. I wouldn't, I'm trying to be intentional at least, and I hope it's coming through. But yeah,
It is coming true, and the creativity is strong on that one. What's your creative process to get all of that good content that we see on TikTok from you? The cold email in the lake thing, which was pretty amazing. Tell us a bit more about the whole process of how you get to create that. You use Google Docs. What are the systems?
yeah. So step one, I consume a lot of content more than I should. I watch a lot of YouTube-esque content, whether that be gaming videos or Heck, I'm starting to collect my you can't quite see it on the camera here, but my Lego collection is getting pretty intense now. So I watch like a lot of people who talk about like Lego and stuff like that. And if you watch those, if you consume content with intention, then often what you can actually start to see is these things that are working well for other people. Not so much like copying them, but okay, they did an edit there. They had a sound effect. The pacing, there was this many cuts, or it was really funny how they kind of brought it full circle, the storytelling element, and then taking those and trying to apply those to my own creations of how can I make that work for a video about cold emailing. And then the second thing is, so for example, you mentioned that video there, the cold email 101 video, which probably my best video that I've ever made, and I edited that whole thing as well. It was an absolute beast, but I didn't want it just to be this boring video about cold emails, because I could sit in the same seat I'm in right now and I've done that video and given all the same tips, but it wouldn't have been as engaging as if it didn't start with me jumping out of an ice lake and, you know, filming at the top of a ski run and having all these crazy backgrounds and effects and whatnot. So it's always like, okay, I want to make a video about this because I know that people want that content. So I'm thinking about the audience, but how can I elevate it to more than that? What can I weave in there? So last week I put a video out where we were talking about spam emails, and I decided to eat an entire can of spam. Like it's just something else that makes the video more than just a video about spam emails, right? So like, did he really just eat that whole can of spam raw? And the answer is, by the way, for anyone, this is exclusively for this podcast. No, I didn't. I just put it in my mouth and then just spat it out because I cannot eat it. Oh, rough. Just thinking about it.
Should have included some throwing up in there, and like the analogy of people throwing up on spam.
I still have the footage of me spitting it out, so I could still do like a behind the scenes piece of content from that. That would be quite funny, but right. It's kind of almost makes it more gross because then it's like you have to visualize me spitting out stuff. So I don't know if I will do that.
Yeah, but it was quite good as well. Watch that one as well. Beautiful, beautifully done. So lots of work behind each of these videos, let's say 20 to 40 hours between each of them, and lots of resources. Let's call it a couple of thousands of dollars between each, or is it more lean?
I'd say definitely more lean. So, I mean, we are trying to hire a video editor right now, just take some of that work off mine. But all these videos are scripted, filmed, and edited by myself right now. So the budget for that spam video was 1 can of spam, plus my overhead, of course, right? You know, my salary has to take effect in that. The budget for that ice lake video, I think I bought a ski pass to get to the top of the hill for that view. So that was $40 Canadian. And that was it.
Pretty lean.
Pretty lean, pretty scrappy. Not that we don't have the money to spend, like you mentioned, we just got some funding. But I don't know. I guess maybe that's the nomad in me, the backpacker, bootstrapped mentality. I'm like, I can make a good video about having to spend tons of money, right? Right. And there's something authentic about that as well, I think.
Let's take the last couple of minutes to talk about Lavender. Tell us a bit more about it, and we'll finish up with cold email.
Yeah, for sure. So Lavender, like the idea is that most sales emails aren't very good. A lot of sellers don't know this because they're not on the receiving end of a lot of them. But they're typically way too long, full of cliches, written all about themselves. Like I mentioned earlier, sales isn't about you, it's about your prospect. So the idea of Lavender is that while you're writing the email, you can get coaching and tips on how to improve your email and get a higher chance of getting a response from the prospect that you're sending it to. And what that does is, one, saves leaders having to coach their reps and comb through their emails in the CRM and say, oh, that was better, that was worse, and then not even know that coaching is going to work. So the idea of Lavender is really just, if you want to send better emails, stick it in. It's free for like, you get like a trial. It's like product like growth motion. And then it will tell you what's low hanging fruit to make your email better.
Love it. Tell us about the AI aspect of it, and tell us how that AI is helping write less crap emails, and we can segue also in how people are, the errors that they make in sending most email.
Yeah. So the AI functionality is interesting, right? Because part of our platform is powered by OpenAI, GPT 3.5, I think we use. But AI alone isn't enough to send a good email. because we see this right now. Actually, a lot of reps are now relying on tools that use pure AI to generate them emails. Those emails often aren't actually very good. So what we combine the AI with is the data from around 100 million cold emails. So we've seen those, we've seen which ones get replied to in both a positive and negative way. And from that, we've then plugged our data in on top of the AI to then say, okay, this is what's working, right? So it's not just, hey, ChatGPT, write me an email. It's, oh, this is the data, this is what it says, these are the errors that people make. The main place where you'll see more generative AI is when you write a sentence, and it could have been said in less words or in a more impactful way. That's where the tool will jump in and say, hey, there's a more concise way to write this, because your email should be short, and the longer the sentence, the less chance that the customer's going to read it, essentially. But it's the main value prop for us is that data, the fact that we've seen what hasn't worked in so many different emails.
Right. Last but not least, tell us about your new dad life and how you've implemented the new dad protocols into your work and your talent at making good money. How's that been recently, I would guess?
Yeah, it's all right. I've just had a second kid. She's just turned 6 months old, and I've got another kid who just turned 3 years old. It's pretty exhausting. I won't lie with the kids, but it doesn't mean that you have to adapt and get better at working and do more of the time that you do have away from them. And then actually make sure you're committed to making sure the time that you're with them is well spent, because it can be tempting, especially a lot of my role revolves around social media. And I'm always tempted to go on there and check and see what's happening. So creating boundaries is super important, I think, for anyone. But especially that's the main lesson I've had to learn, is like being in the moment, putting down the phone after a certain time, or scheduling times when I can check it, because there are things that you do need to worry about with content. You know, I do go on there and just make sure things are looking good, respond to some comments, you know, make sure the community's fed as well.
Love it. Lots of insights today, Will. Thank you for showing up. Where can people find out more about you and Lavender?
LinkedIn's probably the best spot. So Will Aitken, Aitken, and then Lavender, spelled how it normally is. All of our employees have a purple heart on their name. So follow everyone. We all have different ways of talking online and use different voices to get the same ideas across.